Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Stephen Aldan. I'm the CEO of WellSteps. I wanted to welcome you to today's webinar, How Successful Brokers Play the Wellness Card. It'll be presented by Dr. Troy Adams, who I'll introduce in just a minute. We've got about 450 people signed up for the webinar. I want to just give you a few of the logistics of today's program. You can ask questions at any time during the webinar, whether they're regarding the technology of the webinar or regarding the content. Just click on the questions box on the right side of your control panel. We have Ryan Isaacson, our Director of Operations, back behind the scenes going through those questions. I'll be going through those too, and at the end we'll have about 5 to 10 minutes to bring as many of those into the discussion as we can. So feel free, the more you interact, the more you'll get out of this. Also, the slides for today's presentation, as well as the recorded video later, and any assets that Dr. Adams has are already going to be posted or will soon be posted at the WellSteps webinars link. Go to wellsteps.com, click on our webinars button, and just scroll down and you'll see the link to today's webinar. The slides are there now. The video will be there a little bit later. You'll be able to do anything you want with those, use them, share them, watch the video again. All of your phones have been muted just to make the technology work. But again, feel free to ask all the questions you want. This is our monthly series of webinars. We've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years now. Troy Adams, Dr. Adams, has done about half of them, and I've done another half. We brought in a lot of other people. It's a great way for us to give back to the community, share with you what we know. Troy comes out of University of Texas at Austin, where he got his PhD. Taught at Oklahoma State for several years, taught at Arizona State for several years, and during that time has done a considerable amount of research in research publications, discovering the evidence that supports what we do as wellness professionals. He's written several books. He's been a consultant. He's been a speaker. He's been engaged in this pretty much his whole career, and few know more about worksite wellness programs than Dr. Adams. So he brings a wealth of information. He's also, I know from a personal perspective, spent an enormous amount of time putting this presentation together to give you some really actionable, useful information about how brokers are doing this. He's been interviewing brokers, and we've been discussing it a lot. The challenge for us is to find a topic that is really relevant and important to you, and this one's really focusing in on brokers and what they're doing in this space. So without any further ado, Troy, welcome, good morning, and I'll toss it off to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us in this monthly webinar series. Today we're going to talk about how successful brokers play the wellness card. There are brokers out there who are very, very successful who found a way to play the broker card. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. Technology is great, isn't it? There we go. So how successful play the wellness card? First of all, you got to wonder, how do they do it? I want to illustrate with this kind of funny illustration. Right here you have a game of high stakes poker, okay? Most of us have played poker before, and I don't want to go too deep with this metaphor. They say you can beat it to death, but suffice it to say, there are many players involved in this game, and each one has their own agenda. That is to win. So, for example, you can see right here, this is the CEO dog. Over here is the CFO dog, and we'll ignore the fact that they're smoking cigars and pipes. But you can also notice these guys have the most chips. They could be females. They've got the most chips because they're in positions of power. Over here you have the EAP dog, right here, this gray fella back here who's psychoanalyzing everybody. That's pretty typical, isn't it? Here you have the HR dog right here in the center. It looks overworked, just wants to be in bed. And over here, this is really important, you've got the broker consultant dog. That is the broker consultant dog. Now, note the sharp focus, note the beady eyes, note the concentration. This dog is paying really close attention to the decision makers, to the CEO and the CFO. And it's just fine having only a few chips for now. To this dog, the only play that matters is to be at the table, right? The chips will come. The chips will eventually come. This dog will wait for the one play that will cement a place forever at this table. That play, I'm here to tell you, is the wellness card. So here are our objectives today. Something about my technology is not quite working. I apologize. Here are our objectives today. First of all, we're going to discuss the returns because there are multiple returns on comprehensive wellness programs. We're going to talk about how to creatively find money for wellness programs. I know some of you are already doing that. We're going to provide a couple of tools and some suggestions on how to navigate the veritable maze of federal privacy and non-discrimination laws. So you have to wonder, how are successful brokers and consultants playing the wellness card? How does being at the table even help become a trusted advisor, right? If you're a producer, a broker, consultant, this wellness card can lead to a bigger pile of chips at the end of the game. And that's, I think, what motivates a lot of us. So I'm going to answer all of these objectives today, and I'm going to do my very best to answer the questions that you have at the end of the webinar today as well. So let's first talk about the returns on comprehensive wellness programs. There are at least three kinds of returns. There is a financial ROI. That's the one that we hear about the most often. There is the emotional ROI. It refers to softer reasons why a wellness benefit might be provided. I see these soft reasons as becoming more important. That's just me. But the most important thing is to know which of these matters most to the customer. Because if the customer doesn't care about a financial ROI, there's no sense making a case. So it's critical that we know which kind is the biggest motivator for our customers. I don't want to create a false dichotomy here between the two. Is it financial or emotional? Sometimes it's both, but mostly the customer is driven by one or the other predominantly. Okay, and the third return is a big pile of chips at the end of the game for the producer. I'll get to that later, I promise. So here is the question that we ask in all of our implementation meetings. This is going to help you know which return matters most to the customer. We ask this question, then we shut up and listen. Why are you starting, or in the case of upgrade or upgrading, your wellness program? And then we shut up and listen. Sometimes we have to probe, sometimes we have to ask questions, but generally the customer will tell you, even if you have to listen between the lines, why they're doing wellness, because they know. They haven't gotten there haphazardly. They haven't just randomly decided to start a program. There's been some thought, there's been some discussion, and they generally know why is the most important reason for starting a wellness program. So when you ask and they tell you, then you will know which case to make, a financial case, an emotional case, or sometimes both. So let's talk about these three kinds of returns. Now, in discussing these, I'm going to share insights I got from your peers, as Steve mentioned. I also got information from your competitors, all of whom have been playing the wellness card for some time now. One of these people, I will say, is a highly respected senior leader for a very, very large and very successful benefits consulting firm. And what he had to say was really insightful. In fact, let's start with him. I asked him why his firm embraced wellness. And he said it was pain. He said his firm, which is, again, a large self-insured group, was experiencing a painful trend like many of their customers were, and like many of your customers are. This healthcare cost trend is what mattered the most to them. They knew that if they did nothing, here's the key, if they did nothing, there would be even more pain. So they decided to act. They followed their own advice, and several years ago, what they did is they implemented a wellness program. Now, understandably, there are a lot of ways to do this. They have their own way. He said he reported that their recent data indicates that their cost trend is lower than the national trend. And that is not to say that it is flat or it is going down. It's just not increasing as much. And that's a good thing. He said this fact alone gives their producers, brokers, and consultants significant traction when they go out, meet with customers, and then play the wellness card, because they're credible. He said it also has created another competitive advantage that you will not believe. He said this, I quote, "You will tell this to brokers and consultants, they won't believe it." I'm going to share that later. I'm going to leave that one hanging. I know somebody's asking the question, what about the small firm? So I'm just going to answer this one really quick. You might wonder, well, aren't these advantages, the wellness advantage, isn't that only available to large self-insured groups? I would be surprised if somebody hadn't already typed that question in. So I'm going to refer you to, again, the webinars link off the WellSteps main page. There's a case study on a small employer, Boris Lowe Insurance. Many small firms have experienced substantial benefits from wellness programs. This is one of them. It's a great write-up by Wellcoa. This firm had less than 30 employees. They've been playing the wellness card and been walking the talk for some time now. They broke all the rules because they're small. They're not supposed to have wellness. And I'm telling you, they're crushing it. So you can download this articles from our webinars page. So let's talk a little bit about the return on comprehensive wellness programs. What about financial ROI? Well, I've heard wellness critics say that there's not one, I'm going to quote, this is a direct quote, there's not one published study out there that shows that wellness programs result in a positive ROI. I apologize for starting here, but it is an interesting thing to say that. Let me show you the reference list, by the way, for those who make this claim. Here's the reference list. That's the reference list right there. Not one shred of evidence reference list. It's pretty empty. You can make that claim really easily. The funny thing is there are 31 studies published in the peer-reviewed literature as of the last update. We have a free ROI calculators on our website, 3 of them. Talk about those in a second. And we update them every 2 years. We did an update about a year ago. And as of a year ago, there were 31 really well-conducted studies. You can access those by going to the tools page off our main page, clicking on ROI calculators, and then clicking down here on this button, the science. The science button will take you to a brief explanation of how the 3 calculators work, and there is a complete reference list with all 31 studies right there. So sorry for the sidetrack, but there is a wellness body of evidence. I just want to share this with you because it's important as you sit at that table and you play the wellness card. You need to know this information. We've got just a little bit of excitement going on here. I keep hearing some, that is not my television or my kids because they're all grown, I promise. At any rate.
Muted. Unmuted.
So let me explain the research process and the publication process that goes into all of this. So here's the research process a little bit. Here's how it would ideally work. If you were designing an ROI study, ideally you would want to compare very similar companies in the same industry, right? Then, if you are designing an ROI study, you would want to have 2 companies that were in a relatively similar geographic region. You would also want to have the same number of employees with about the same gender and age distribution. So they should look exactly the same. And by the way, it would be very helpful if the median wage for both populations was about the same too. You following all this? Okay, so not only that, but also both companies should have the same insurance company, and we best for the previous 2 years. And they should both plan to keep that same insurance company for at least 3 years, maybe even more into the future. That's so you can compare them and compare apples to apples. Most importantly, this insurance company must agree to share the claims data for research purposes, and I can tell you that is like pulling teeth. And this, of course, after all the employees in both companies have provided informed consent to have their data be shared for research purposes. Good luck with that, right? So there's one more thing. It gets better. So one company should have a comprehensive wellness program while the other does not. And the one that does not must agree to keep it that way for the duration of the study. So you get it? 31 ROI studies is a large number of research study in the worksite setting. The study I just described to you is, of course, the gold standard. Now, quite often researchers, they can't do what I just outlined. It's really, really hard to set that up. So they compare groups of employees who work for the same company. And again, you can't randomly select a group of employees to get the wellness program while the other group who was randomly selected not to get it doesn't. You'd be sued quicker than, so quick it'd make your head spin. So you have to make accommodations as a researcher. But conducting the research to support the ROI of wellness investment, it's not easy. Point is, it's been done pretty well over 30 times. So one more thing, I'm going to move on off of this. Just a note about the publication process. When somebody conducts research and they decide that they want to submit it, here's what they have to do. They have to, first of all, have to make a research design. They write up a manuscript after they've conducted all this research. Then they send it to an editor. The editor can reject it right out of hand, or they can send it out for review. And if they send it out for review, the reviewers read it and they can either vote to reject it or have it be revised and resubmitted. This cycle can go on and on for literally years. I had a paper once, it took 5 years to be published, finally, 5 years. From the time that I submitted it to the time that it was ultimately published in the paper took 5 years. So the editor reviews all the comments from the reviewers. They ask then ask the authors for revisions, blah, 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 blah. It's not a perfect process, but it's pretty darn difficult to get something published. So why am I telling you all this? And how will this make you become a trusted advisor? You may be sitting there thinking, I don't really care about any of this. Well, you should. I'm going to tell you why. As a trusted advisor, when you hear a critic say, there are no studies out there demonstrating ROI, you can call their bluff and say, bunk. I know where to find a reference list for this research that substantiates this, and you tell me where yours is, because you're not going to find one. What you're doing, you're spouting off. So you go to this link, again, click on the science, scroll down, there's actually over 40 references. Some of them do other things, but references 1 through 31 are those studies that I talked about. So if your customer requires scientific evidence that other companies have had a positive financial return on investment from a wellness program, then you may want to provide projections based on the best actuarial science available. In other words, I'm saying those 31 studies. That's why one of the first things we did as a company when Steve and I started WellSteps was to develop 3 ROI calculators that we share for free. Healthcare costs, absenteeism, and productivity. Okay, enough about that. So now most of you already know the case for ROI as it relates to healthcare and absenteeism. Let's transition a little bit, talk about something else. There's an elephant in the room, though. And that elephant in the room is lost productivity. It's an elephant because it's 2 to 3 times larger than the cost of healthcare. Let me let you think about that for a little bit. Most customers feel extreme pain from the cost of healthcare. It's killing them. It's hurting everybody, right? And it's gotten worse. That's all I'm going to say about that. But the cost of lost productivity is 2 to 3 times larger than the cost of healthcare. The thing is, nobody ever writes a check for lost productivity. So it's mostly invisible. Lost productivity is just lower absenteeism. It's just absenteeism plus presenteeism. So when the worker can't work, they're absent. They don't want to work when they're distracted by a health issue. We call that presenteeism. Bam, there you go. Lost productive time is what researchers call that. It is by far and away the leader on the list of emotional wellness returns. That also includes, by the way, better morale and lower turnover. These are emotional returns. You might say, well, there's no evidence for that, but there is. Let me share with you a couple of quick examples. This is a study done by our own Dr. Steve Aldana about 3 years ago. And just to summarize, those who exercised out of a working population were 50% less likely to be in a high presenteeism group. So in other words, exercisers were more likely to be productive. That's another way of saying that. And those who were obese or had neck or back pain or who were depressed were between 40 to 57% more likely to be in the high presenteeism group. Another way of saying that is they were less likely to be productive. And all of those things are impacted by wellness programs. So that's one study. Another study, which is sequestered, is actually not coming out until June of this year. This is a great piece of evidence. Study looked at employees who exercised regularly and ate about 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day and got good sleep on 6+ nights per week. If an employee did those 3 things, they had absenteeism that was 16% lower. They had job performance that was 9% higher. And here is the kicker. This is unbelievable. Their job satisfaction was 53% higher. There's a lot more evidence than that, but we'll just leave it at that. Here's what you need to know. Employees are happier, more satisfied with work when they are healthy. They're more productive. They have higher morale and turnover less. There's evidence for all of these things. And one person said, I love this, you can just feel the difference in our company. Now, good luck quantifying that. That will be really, really hard. But that is the perception. And you know what they say about perception, right? Here's the interesting thing. The senior leader who I've referred to of the benefits consulting group, he said, we have ample anecdotal evidence that our wellness program has had an impact on employee health in terms of, pay attention here, disease averted, weight lost, and risk lowered. Now, that's not population based. That's individuals who have not had diseases, who've lost weight, who've lowered their risk. And he says for them, that's enough. They're satisfied with their program. This is an emotional return because they feel like they did something good. And what business doesn't like that? So another professional who works for a health plan told me that several employees who were involved in coaching sessions became emotionally moved and filled with hope after coaching. They expressed gratitude in a whole bunch of different ways just for being listened to. And I will say that is an emotional return, and there's some value in that. So I know you're all sitting there wondering, okay, when is he going to get to the big pile of chips? Let's talk about that return, the big pile of chips. Mr. Senior Exec told me that since they started effectively playing the wellness card, their new business sales has doubled. I'm going to repeat that. Twice as much new business. And you know, if you're a producer, that is a really big deal. I said, that's interesting. Where are the new sales coming from? And I don't think he's listening, but just in case he is, this is a bit of a paraphrase. He said, in short, most likely from the groups that don't offer wellness programs. I'll tell you why I believe that. Now, here's a warning. Here's the part I said earlier you would not believe. And I don't mean that you would find it incredible. I mean that you might be skeptical. He said, and I quote, carriers have started giving them lower rates because they know that all their clients will be introduced to a wellness strategy. Now, you might say, well, claims are claims are claims are claims, right? So how can the carriers offer discounted rates? That's impossible. The underwriter wouldn't back that up because the underwriter would know that there were claims. But he said the discount is coming from the reduced administrative fees charged by the carriers. They know that the customers of this particular firm are going to be less work. They're going to be require less administrative work because there are a greater likelihood of healthy employees. Now, my skeptical business partner, Steve, who I love, he said, oh, no, it's medical loss ratio, blah, 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 medical loss ratio. you all know this, but the fact of the matter is it was their firm who was getting the discount, whether it was medical loss ratio driven or not. They were paying less, and that is a huge, huge competitive advantage. I think it's pretty cool. And the truth is it all started with their own wellness program because they walked the talk. So that's how you get the big pile of chips. You play the wellness card, and that's what people are telling me. All right, let's transition a little bit. How to find money for wellness programs. So the question is, how can you help customers find money to fund wellness programs? I think the bigger question is, what should be the broker involvement in the client wellness program? We'll address both of those hopefully. So Mr. Senior Exec told me that at first they tried to leverage expertise from carriers. What's that really saying another way? I'm going to just put this into common language. We didn't really want to do anything because we didn't know what to do, and so we decided we would let the carriers do it. The carriers all have wellness programs, right? Well, Steve, my business partner, calls that carrier pixie dust. Most, not all, but most carriers don't. They have a wellness strategy, but it's really not much. So that's what they tried to do. They tried to leverage expertise from carriers. But ultimately, customers kept telling them over and over again, hey, you're our broker. We want you to be more prepared. We want you to show leadership when you bring wellness to the table. Know what you're talking about. So it was not enough to show up with a carrier solution. He said some of their customers were investing as much as $500,000 in wellness. And they wanted to feel that their broker or consultant was on board, was knowledgeable. So they've changed the way that they play the wellness card because of what the customers have told them. He said, now it's impossible for a benefits consultant to be an expert in everything. Almost no producers go to school to learn about theories of behavior change and wellness and everything. They can't know everything. But I would say finding money is that one thing that should be in the sweet spot for any broker. And I want to show you a tool to help you find money, and then we're going to talk about a couple of other things. This is a free tool. Some of you have seen this before, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. This is a WellSteps wellness budget calculator. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we produced it. You can read more about clicking. If you want to go here and click on how this works, go to the WellSteps main page, click on tools. It's one of the tools that we provide for free on our webpage. So you can click on how that works, read the whole story. So what we did is we got 11 carriers to give us data, and these carriers were spread all over the country. We got all kinds of data. And so I would say it's pretty darn representative. So the one calculator, this one I'm showing, it tells you how to find money by adjusting copays and deductibles. Put in the number of benefited employees, the total healthcare spend, current copay, current deductible, and you can move the slider to change that to find out how much money you can save. And we've estimated the cost of a wellness program based on expert suggestions. That's all explained here. And again, based on this number. So that's how that one works. You can also find money in premium differential savings. I'll show you that one really quickly. Here, all you do is enter the number of benefit employees, and you make a couple of educated guesses. You say, what's a monthly premium discount for wellness participation? The median is about, somewhere around $50 a month, up or down depending on the region. He says, what this will do, it will show you how to save money through premium differentials. When we built the mathematical algorithm, and Dr. Aldana did most of this one, but we were both surprised at how much more money can be found by tweaking plan design. We did not expect that. We thought premium differential is going to be the king. It's just the opposite. There's so much money locked up in those the copays, and anyway, so we wouldn't have guessed that at all. So beyond finding money, what else should you do as a broker, consultant, to help the customer with a wellness strategy? What are your responsibilities? So I just thought I would mention a couple of other confusing barriers. Here are the barriers, and I'm going to help you overcome them as quickly as I can. Number one, carrier wellness is free. Wellness is for large firms only. I've addressed that to a certain extent already. What is a leader role? The leader role ends with a decision to start a wellness program, and then who will run the program? Well, I will say that if you don't know this already, carrier wellness is not free. It's baked in to rates. It's not free. In fact, your customers are likely being overcharged for what they're getting. So the value is not great. The customers are smart enough to know this. Like I already said, at least one very large benefits consulting firm concluded that carrier wellness programs were not enough to meet customer needs. They had to do it themselves. So next barrier, wellness is for the small and mid-sized. It is no secret, I will say, that ROI evidence I presented to you is from large employers who are not all, but mostly self-insured. Okay, it is no secret that small to mid-sized firms have less control over their healthcare cost trends, that high-cost claims tend to have a greater impact on the bottom line, that rates are largely, if not entirely, determined by the pool and not the risk of the employees. However, here are the results of a study where data were pooled, again from Dr. Aldana and some other researchers. In this study, where data were pooled from 5 small to mid-sized employers. These are actually WellSteps customers. Chart reflects percent change from baseline to 1 year follow-up, just to be really simple. So eating behaviors improved about 31%, exercise improved about 41%, and those reporting good sleep increased almost 50% after 1 year of a wellness program. Now, these changes, which are good outcomes, as indicated in many, many other studies, will ultimately influence other bigger and more important outcomes, the ones that I've already talked about. So the truth is, wellness is for everybody, and a lot of small firms out there are killing it with wellness strategies. So that's good. The next thing, that the leader support of wellness program really ends with the decision to sign a check. That's not the case at all. Leader support does not end with the decision to roll out wellness. Leader support going forward is key. Look at what strong leadership support does to participation and behavior change. It's a no-brainer. So in the programs, this is from a big project that WellSteps conducted with Kaiser Permanente in California. What we learned is that where there's strong leadership support, there's substantially better participation and behavior changes. Actually, the participation is nearly double, and behavior change is substantially better, almost 25 to 30 percentage points higher, just when the leader does things like participating, showing up, offering testimonials, talking about the program in meetings. Those things really matter. So as a broker consultant, when you meet with the leadership team, you might convey the importance of leader support in ultimate program success. That's an easy thing to do. Last barrier, who will run the program? We always joke about Benefits Betty. Benefits Betty is underworked, is underpaid, overworked, is a manager of many, right? Doesn't have any wellness experience and likely won't develop wellness programs. Benefits Betty really is in no position to run the wellness program. What about Broker Bob? The truth is, Broker Bob doesn't do wellness. Broker Bob's very busy. He follows the money. That's what he's not incented to do wellness programs, but he needs to make sure a good strategy. There's a leadership role there. Not really sure where to start because again, Broker Bob doesn't have the training. Want to share with you a strategy, a solution that has been really effective and very useful. Many other companies do this. I'll say this is kind of a WellStep strategy. I know a lot of other people do this. Is the account manager system. So here's a solution that saves Benefits Betty from doing what she wasn't trained to do. It saves Broker Bob from overcommitting and creates wellness ownership. It's critical, even among distributed workforces. So what we do is we have an account manager. We call it a WellSteps guide who manages company accounts, and they work directly with members of a wellness committee who are appointed by maybe even by a team of Benefits Betty and Broker Bob. They say, Al, Susie, Jonna, and Hank would be great leaders at these respective locations because they're positive, they're happy, they live a healthy lifestyle. Let's get them to participate in a wellness committee. Then the WellSteps guide coordinates the communication, the meetings, guidance, leadership in every single way, and in planning and administration of incentives, etc., and so on. This works really, really well. It makes Broker Bob look great. It takes a huge chunk of workload off of the table for Benefits Betty, and we're still driving wellness forward. So that's how to overcome barriers a little bit. Last thing I wanted to talk about was federal laws. This is kind of a kooky area. I will say we have tried to make it as easy as possible to avoid federal pitfalls, and I'm just going to call them that. So again, this is our web page. Go to Wellness Tools. That's where you can find all the other tools that I've mentioned. And you click on the Wellness Compliance Checker. It's just a series of questions. It includes, I will say, as simply as possible. We worked really hard to develop this. A guide with simple questions through all the privacy and non-discrimination laws that are embedded and hidden in HIPAA and GINA. Now, I know some of you might be wondering about the status of the lawsuit filed by the EEOC against Honeywell. So you're probably typing that question in right now. So just about that really quickly, in case you haven't heard, a lawsuit was filed by the EEOC. To me, it sounds suspiciously like the USOC, but two totally different things. They say that basically Honeywell is charging employees for being unhealthy. They want Honeywell to stop. They say that what they're doing violates the American with Disabilities Act and GINA. So they want them to stop. So the response from Honeywell and actually from other wellness leaders is Honeywell says, well, we followed HIPAA and the ACA. And so, and by the way, no employee has ever been denied coverage. So we're not really clear where you're coming from here on this. And to quote Honeywell, they say, incentives we provide are specifically sanctioned by two separate federal statutes and are in compliance with both these guidelines. No employee has ever been denied coverage, they further add, or been disciplined for opting out of a wellness program. Now, here's what you should know as a producer. According to a national survey sponsored by the National Business Group on Health, no employer surveyed, and maybe there were some employers out there we just don't know about, but the big ones that were surveyed, no employer, not one in 2014, denied access to health coverage based on participation in a wellness activity. Not one. Not one. Also, nearly 75% of the companies surveyed in this large and diverse survey, 75% used wellness incentive, and most of those were positive. They were rewards of participation, not punitive. So this lawsuit doesn't even target what is considered representative of most wellness programs out there. I found that very interesting. I thought you should know that. You should know this because companies who use positive incentives are, by the way, not named in this suit. And that's a happy thing. No one wants to be the test case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court for HIPAA or GINA. That is for sure. So what you can do, in the meantime, here's what experts suggest. Encourage clients to follow HIPAA and the ACA. I'm not a lawyer, but the so-called financial penalties and are really premium contributions and HSA contributions offered under a voluntary health plan that is available to every Honeywell employee. I do wonder, since this plan is not forced on any of them, and we now have federal exchanges, which gives employees another option, if this will weaken the case. That's just my opinion. I don't really know. But I knew that some of you would wonder about that. So what else you can do? Here's where I specifically want to spend a little bit of time. You will have customers come to you and they will maybe have ideas about health contingent programs. And we've done webinars about this where we've talked, and you should all know what health contingent means. It's also called outcomes-based. Outcomes-based is now a subset of health contingent, whatever. I don't want to get into all that. Health contingent wellness programs must be deployed with great planning and communication. I would liken it to a tobacco cessation policy. You cannot just wake up one morning and say, well, we're going to make this a non-smoking campus. It really takes a lot more planning and communication now. Unfortunately, some companies don't realize that. They decide they can just ramrod health contingent program down the throat of their employees. And that's where you see a lot of backlash. You see a lot of upset employees because they weren't prepared for it. It wasn't stepped in. They didn't have an opportunity to sound off. And particularly, this is the case. If the culture is toxic, and how do you know the culture is toxic? If you're a broker and producer and you work with employers, the best way I can say it is that you just know. You walk in and it just feels toxic. You get the heebie-jeebies. If you have a customer and the culture is relatively toxic, strong leadership who kind of pushes against the grain, I would strongly discourage this approach, the health contingent approach. Why? Because in a toxic culture, there's already low trust. a health contingent program will be viewed suspiciously. Does not matter how it gets spun. And if it's viewed suspiciously, it's just a matter of time before something will blow up. If something blows up, there's a high likelihood that everyone will go down with the ship, including the broker. So this is a time to be brave and be honest and say, you know what, maybe there's a better approach we can take. We've seen this many times before, and it never ends well for anyone who's at the table. I will say, I asked several people about their biggest wellness disasters, and I won't tell you names, but this was listed right at the top. This person said that when brokers are not team players, this is another topic I'm talking about. We're not team players or try to control everything, including things about which they possess no expertise. Things generally don't go well. And the end of that story is that in this specific case, the broker was terminated. So the message here is to vet, then trust your wellness vendors to do their job. That doesn't mean you can't have check-in meetings. That doesn't mean you can't talk to them and ask them how it's going. You should do that as a broker, but the job of the wellness vendor is to deliver a wellness program. And if you've done your job vetting, then there should be adequate trust. All right. Well, I fired a lot of stuff at you. I just want to share with you what some of the people I interviewed shared as wellness keys. These were common themes that appeared over and over again. These were offered to me as wellness keys. So I'm just going to share these. So one is to make the wellness a benefit, to show the employees that they're cared about as an expression of love, not to force them or compel them to do things to reduce healthcare costs. Generally, employees don't really care about healthcare costs. There tends to be an entitlement thinking there a little bit. But they do respond to things that the employer does that demonstrate compassion and care. So I'm just going to leave that out there. Second, make sure that there's a plan to facilitate participation. If you're a broker, this is a question you can ask. You can say, well, how are you going to facilitate participation? What things are going to be done? Let the vendor, let the wellness committee provide the answer to that question. Some of the things that have been done are work time or flex time to participate in wellness activities. That's not going to work for everybody, but where possible, it does. At WellSteps, we're a small firm. We offer flex time. We allow people to do things on a flexible schedule so that they can stay healthy. I'm going for a workout a little bit later today, as a matter of fact. This is a key thing. Make it really easy to sign up. So in one of the planning processes, brokers should say, how are you going to make it easy to sign up? How are we going to eliminate barriers to participation here? If you can do that as a broker, you're doing great. Third thing they mentioned is communication plan. Communicate. There ought to be a way really clearly to communicate very often with employees about everything that's happening in the wellness program. And then lastly, this came up many times. Guess what? The company is sponsoring a wellness program. Come and have a slice of pizza and cookies and pop to celebrate the new wellness program. What's not right here? So they say, if you're going to walk the talk as a company, you're going to have a wellness program. Make sure that you take a look at catering. Make sure that catering is healthy. Make sure that food in the vending machines is healthy. Make sure that healthy food is shared at company events, especially wellness events. So there you go. Here are some keys to success that you should know about. All right, I think that just about that wraps us up. But in summary, find out what return matters to the customer and show up informed and prepared to talk about that return. Is it financial? Is it emotional? Maybe a little bit of both. As a broker, plan design to make it easy to afford the wellness program. There's money locked up in plans, pretty easy to get out. I know it's easy for me to say that because I'm not a broker, but I work with brokers enough to know that it can be done. Do the right thing by people, and federal laws will take care of themselves. That's just my personal opinion. And that brings us to a big thanks to everybody and time for questions. Steve?
Hey, Troy, Lanny Key has been taking copious notes, and here's her question. She says, you mentioned who would run the wellness program, If it's not the broker and it's not Benefits Betty, then that means it's going to be some kind of third-party vendor. Her question: is there a return on investment to hire a health and wellness management person instead of, and she misinterpreted what you said, instead of using employee volunteers, is there really a budget there to hire an outside group? So help her understand how the outside vendor comes in and integrates with those on-site employees, and is the ROI there?
All right. Well, it all goes back to what is the budget for wellness, and the experts say it should be around $150 per employee per person. That's going to vary depending on whether how it's done. But I would say that's a reasonable budget. It's going to be lower for larger companies. It's going to be maybe a little bit higher for smaller companies. Ultimately the employer has to decide whether they want to hire somebody in-house, pay their benefits. That's going to be a very costly discussion. Or do they want to hire a vendor to do it? That's an internal decision. What we found in our experience is that of using employee volunteers and maybe rotating them every 2 years off the committee, you get good, fresh input. You get exciting energy. You get great leadership from lay volunteers. But they're guided and directed through the process of every single thing they need to do. All theory-based decisions that need to be made are all delivered to them. They discuss, they make decisions. Those decisions are then acted on by the vendors who are being paid to deliver the program. And yes, there is evidence of ROI in doing it either way. I would say most of the early ROI evidence came from companies that hired and benefited their own employees to run their wellness programs. But the opposite is the case as well. Hopefully I answered your question.
Another question, this comes in from Jerry. He says that the whole benefits about these wellness programs are a no-brainer. That's pretty simple. The question is, what's the hurdle to getting brokers to do this more common with groups? I mean, we understand the benefits. Is this a cost barrier? Is this an implementation barrier? What's the barrier to getting groups to do this?
Well, I do not think that every single broker in America is going to use wellness. They're not going to play wellness as a card at the table. I think it comes down to, and I got to be careful not to get myself in trouble. I'm going to quote what Mr. Senior Exec said to me. I didn't want to bring this into the conversation. He said, "Not all brokers are motivated to do this. Brokers do very well financially. They are going to do the minimum amount of work that they possibly can to earn the money they need to live on, and any other work beyond that is seen as unnecessary." So what I'm suggesting is there's never going to be a time where every single broker is going to deliver a wellness strategy. I'm suggesting that if you want to be one of those brokers who wants your firm to be around for a long time, you want to do a little bit better so you can be more prepared for retirement and to send your kids to college, this is a strategy that has paid huge dividends for brokers that are willing to go to a little bit of extra effort. And so hopefully I answered that as delicately and politically correctly as I possibly could.
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen the really good brokers do is they'll use an outside vendor to do this because the employer wants some consistency, whether they change carriers or brokers or programs. If they change, then all their wellness efforts goes poof, and they start from scratch again. So if you really care about your groups, you want them to have consistency, with or without you, if you're really trying to help them solve their problem. Here's another, Troy. This one is from Allison. She wants to know if there's some kind of report or a consumer's guide to wellness vendors, comparing vendors and cost. And she also wants to know if you have any opinion on NCQA's accreditation. It's expensive? Should groups really worry about it?
Well, okay. So thank you for that question. First of all, regarding the consumer reports for wellness vendors, we used to have one, and we provided it on our website for free. And what we found is that as quickly as we would update it and list wellness vendors, they would be out of business. That's the truth. And so we quit doing that. The closest I think you could probably come is to go through WellCOA, Wellness Councils of America. They put out an issue once a year that has you have to be really pretty well set up in the wellness industry in order to participate in that magazine. I would go there and find wellness vendors listed there. The other thing you could do is go to some of the better wellness and health promotion conferences. I would think the American Journal of Health Promotion Conference in San Diego. They rotate around, but it's every March, February or March. That's a great conference to go to, and there's some good vendor representation there. Those are two good places you could find out about quality vendors. The other thing you could do is network with other people in the industry who use wellness strategy. And there's a lot of truth to what Steve is saying. Once you've developed a relationship of trust with a wellness vendor, that doesn't mean that you're always going to introduce that wellness vendor to every single customer, because you have to know the customer. Sometimes a vendor would be wrong for a specific customer. Maybe another vendor would be more right? So at the bottom line is what the customer needs. Your other question about NCQA accreditation.
Yeah, is it something they should be worried about?
I don't want to come across as a
stick in the mud.
Stick in the mud, but I'm going to say no. I think it's a lot of accreditations and certifications out there actually are they're money traps, and I do sound like a stick in the mud, I know, but I don't know that it's particularly. I think you're vetting to the vendor. The relationship of trust is far more important than whether or not they have NCQA accreditation. Dr. Aldana and I joke. I hope this is okay, Steve, to say this, that the NCAA, you can tell where my head is. The NCQA accreditation is based on research conducted in large part by people like Dr. Aldana and Dr. Adams, and so we produced the research. It seems
they took what we've been doing for years and slapped a big price tag on it and called it good wellness.
And that's capitalism, and we'll just leave it at that.
God bless America. Troy, one broker wants to know your opinion. They have someone on site at their brokerage firm that helps employer groups schedule and do biometric screening. So they arrange for the lab to come in and gather data and get their results. That's pretty much the beginning and end of their wellness effort. I mean, it's something, but what's your opinion? I mean, they're wasting money, wasting time? Is this helpful?
Well, I would say it's a good start. The question you have to ask yourself if you're a broker is, you've done a good thing by introducing your customers to a group that will come in and measure blood pressure. I always remember the situation I had where I took undergraduate students across the freeway in Austin, Texas, into the African American community, and we measured blood pressure in African American churches, about 30 of them. And I measured the blood pressure, or I had a student measure the blood pressure of this very large woman. She said, the cuff is not working. I went over, I measured it, and so as you know, blood pressure, this woman's blood pressure values were north of 210 over 110, to my recollection. They were extraordinarily high, and I told this woman, here is what your blood pressure is. And this is what biometric vendors do, largely. Here's what your blood pressure is. This lovely woman looked at me with big brown eyes and a lot of trust and love in her heart, and she said, is that good? So the question is, okay, it's one thing to tell your employees what the problem is, but how are you going to help them? I had another woman who said, we said, you should go to a doctor right away. She said, I don't have a doctor. So we had to help her figure out how to get help and the treatment that she needed. So biometric screening is great. It's going to help raise awareness. It's going to tell employees what the problem is, but if you don't provide something that's going to help them solve the problem, always comes back to behaviors. That's almost like a tease, Steve, for your webinar next month. I'm just going to advance to the next slide. Then I think that you could be doing more as a broker. That's my opinion.
So we have a question here from Jared. From your experience, what are brokers doing? What of 100 brokers, how many are going it alone? How many are doing nothing? how many are hiring and farming it out to a partner, a wellness vendor partner, or or somewhere between. Do you have any feel for that at all?
No, I can't give you. Jared, that's a great question. I can't give you percentages. I have no idea. But Steve, you addressed some of the main ones. I think that by and large, the majority of brokers probably don't do anything. Or similar is to say the carrier, whoever writes this policy, the carrier has a wellness program, and that's going to be good enough. What I'm telling you, the really, really, really good, very, very successful brokers have realized that's not enough, and that the customers are telling them that's not enough. I think if you were to go back to some of your better customers and dig in a little bit, I think that you would find that they want more. They want and they need more out of their broker than just to turn them over to the carrier. We worked with a carrier who I will not name, and the carrier had made a decision to adopt for lack of a better term, a health risk appraisal. And all of the people that we met with who were leadership in charge of this health plan, to a person, they said we couldn't complete the health risk appraisal. We just couldn't do it. We just didn't have time. And so, in our webinar last month, one of our participants said, make sure that you test your own stuff. Whatever's being rolled out there, make sure you test your own stuff. I would say that to brokers too. If you're rolling out a wellness program, man, make sure you know what your customer's getting, and that the employees can actually do what's being recommended. If a senior leader can't complete a personal health assessment or health risk appraisal because it's too long, and it's too long for everybody.
One more question, Troy. You talked about programs that really are built on compassion and caring and work, and I want to tie that in with the notion that we have this phenomenon at WellSteps where our third year we have a performance guarantee where people will do an analysis of their claims, and yet no one ever asks for it. How do those two things fit together in this process?
The relationship, you're going to have to reframe the question.
Well, let me just state, in essence.
Well, why don't you answer your own question, Steve?
Well, it was a question that was added and mixed with three more, and I turned it into a bowl of oatmeal. This idea of we come at it with wanting to reduce our healthcare costs and save a lot of money. WellSteps has always been having this performance guarantee, and after year 3, we guarantee a positive ROI, and we're going to offer to evaluate your claims. What we've found is that if employers will do this with the right spirit, if it's not hardcore Big Brother-esque, if you're not making people spit and testing for nicotine in their spit, if you're doing this for the right reasons, morale and productivity and absenteeism and just overall happiness at work trump the need to do the hardcore evaluation, which is backed up by the fact that we have never been asked to evaluate year 3 claims ROI from a single client we've ever had because they don't care anymore. At this point, the program has created something different, a new environment, a new place to work. Morale has changed, and there appears that the clients have enough value and enough pleasure in what's going on with wellness that the big question of claims ROI has withdrawn to the background because of these other factors. That's kind of what I'm alluding to. And that's when the programs really are, not that the ROI won't be there. We do that anyway because we're researchers, but that's not the way to approach it.
Yeah, we are doing an ROI evaluation for a customer. They didn't ask for it. We went to them and told them we want to do this, and it's really exciting. I think what we're learning about that. We'll talk about that in a future webinar. And this really goes back to I never forget what the CEO stood and said. One of our employees said, "It just feels different in here. It just feels different around here." That's the kind of thing that happens with wellness programs. It's really tough to put your finger on as a researcher, but something that people can feel. A culture, the environment has changed somehow. Whether you do it through wellness, whether you do it through organizational development, people like to go someplace that is happy. It's a good place to work. So.
And there's value in that. A lot of value there.
Lots and lots of value. So,
Troy, thank you very much for all your hard work. We appreciate your answering the questions and being with us today. Everyone, if you need the slides or the video recording, they're at wellsteps.com at the webinars link. And hopefully we'll see you in a month when we really dive in and look at the secret sauce, the secret ingredient behind making these things really work, and that's behavior change. Thanks, everyone.